One night in the haunted Heritage Palace. The camera zooms into the ancient, crumbling gates of the eerie Heritage Palace. The wind howls through the empty halls as a cold, whispering voice echoes, "Some doors should never be opened." Thunder crashes as the screen flashes to black and a terrified scream pierces the silence. When the screen flickers back on, we see a chilling image, a handprint of blood smeared across a dusty wall. Three friends went looking for a thrill. What they found was a nightmare. The arrival at the palace. It was supposed to be a fun weekend. Ryan, Claire, and Mike, three college friends from a local university, had heard rumors about an abandoned heritage palace on the outskirts of town. The place was said to be haunted, but none of them believed in ghosts. What better way to spend a Friday night than exploring an old, spooky building? They arrived at the palace just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the overgrown gardens. The once majestic structure now stood in eerie silence, its tall spires stretching into the darkening sky. Vines crept along the weathered stone walls, and broken windows revealed only blackness beyond. Ryan, the fearless one, grinned as he pushed open the heavy gates. "It's just a story. We'll be fine." Mike hesitated. "Are you sure this is a good idea? What if the rumors are true?" Claire rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Mike. You're not scared, are you?" The three of them stepped inside, unaware that the palace had been waiting for them. Scene 2. The exploration begins. The air inside the palace was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Their footsteps echoed in the grand hall as they shined their flashlights around, revealing portraits of long-dead nobles staring down at them with cold, lifeless eyes. A grand chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, swaying slightly, though there was no breeze. Claire smirked. "See? Just an old building. Nothing to worry about." As they ventured deeper, they found strange markings carved into the walls, symbols none of them recognized. Claire noticed the air growing colder, and Mike began to hear faint whispers, but when he turned to his friends, neither of them seemed to hear it. Suddenly, Claire's flashlight flickered and died. She shook it, cursing under her breath. "Of all the times for this thing to go out!" Ryan laughed, but the sound was hollow, echoing off the walls in a way that made all of them shiver. They were in a long corridor now, the air heavy with tension. "Maybe we should head back," Mike suggested, his voice shaky. But just as they turned to leave, the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening bang! Scene 3. The descent into horror. Startled, they ran to the door, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard Ryan pushed or how desperately Mike tugged, it was locked tight. Panic began to creep in. That's when Claire noticed something. They weren't alone. Standing at the far end of the corridor was a figure, cloaked in shadow, barely visible in the dim light. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, watching them. Claire's heart pounded in her chest. "Guys, someone's here." Ryan turned and his blood ran cold. "Who's there?" he shouted, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move, slowly, deliberately, towards them. Mike grabbed Claire's arm. "Run!" They sprinted down the hallway, bursting through a door at the end and slamming it behind them. They found themselves in a massive room, likely the ballroom, judging by the high ceilings and shattered chandeliers. But the terror wasn't over. The floor beneath them began to creak and moan as if the palace itself was alive. Suddenly, the floorboards cracked, and Claire screamed as she fell into the darkness below. Scene 4. The Curse Unleashed. Ryan and Mike scrambled to pull Claire back up, but she was gone. Her screams echoed from the abyss beneath them, then faded into nothing. Despair set in, but they had no time to mourn. The figure from the hallway had followed them. Its glowing eyes now hovered just feet away. Without thinking, they ran again, this time deeper into the palace. They reached the basement, a dark, cold place filled with strange relics and statues that seemed to move in the corner of their eyes. As they frantically searched for a way out, Ryan tripped over something on the floor, a small, ancient-looking box. Mike picked it up, curious despite the fear gripping his heart. "What is this?" Suddenly, the whispers returned. Louder now, almost deafening. The figure appeared in the doorway, closer than ever, its hand outstretched toward the box. Ryan grabbed Mike. "We need to get out of here." But it was too late. The box sprang open, and with it, a force unlike anything they'd ever felt exploded from within. Shadows swirled around them, and the palace shook violently as if the very foundation was tearing apart. The figure loomed over them now, its face finally visible, skeletal, hollow, with eyes that burned like fire. It whispered a single word: leave. Scene 5, the escape, or so they thought. Ryan and Mike didn't need to be told twice. They bolted out of the basement, sprinting through the palace, desperate for an exit. Doors that had been locked moments ago were suddenly open, and the way out became clear. As they reached the front gates, they burst into the night air, gasping for breath. They didn't stop running until they reached their car, the palace now a distant silhouette behind them. They jumped inside, slamming the doors shut. For a moment, there was silence. Mike looked at Ryan, his hands shaking. Claire? She's gone. Ryan nodded, tears in his eyes. We should never have come here. Just as they were about to drive away, Mike glanced into the rearview mirror, and his heart stopped. In the back seat, barely visible, was a figure with glowing eyes, staring at them from the shadows. The screen fades to black as a blood-curdling scream fills the air. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed.